So we want you to tell us everything about Lawrence Anini. So first of all, we want to know about you. How old are you, your name, when you were born, and everything about your family?
Nigeria was living in fear. Armed robbery had become a nightmare. But one name stood above all others. A man so dangerous, so ruthless that even the Nigerian police feared saying his name out loud. That man was Lawrence Anini, known across the country as the Law. He ruled the streets of Benin City with bullets, fear, and bloodshed. For months, banks were emptied, police checkpoints became death traps, and every night, Nigerians wondered one terrifying question: where will Anini strike next? But behind the legend was a poor boy from the streets, a boy who would later become Nigeria's most wanted criminal. This is the story of the rise and violent fall of Lawrence Anini. Lawrence Anini was born in the 1960s into poverty. Life in Nigeria was already difficult, but for children growing up without opportunities, survival often came before morality. Anini reportedly grew up around the streets of Benin City, where crime was slowly becoming part of everyday life. At first, he was not a killer. He was a street hustler. Friends described him as quiet, observant, and extremely fearless. But the streets rewarded violence, and over time, petty crime evolved into something more darker. By his teenage years, Anini had entered the criminal underworld. Car theft, street robbery, smuggling, every crime made him more experienced, more connected, and more dangerous. And eventually, he found the perfect crew. By the early 1980s, Anini had formed one of Nigeria's deadliest robbery gangs. His closest allies included Monday Osumbo, Aloysius Abonine, Kingsley Omoruji. Together, they terrorized highways and major cities. Their attacks were fast, precise, brutal. Witnesses said the gang moved like trained soldiers. They carried automatic weapons, used stolen vehicles, and had information inside law enforcement. This made Anini nearly impossible to catch. But what truly made him infamous was his complete lack of fear. He didn't hide from the police. He hunted them. As Anini's gang expanded, so did the violence. Police officers became direct targets. In several attacks, officers were ambushed and killed in cold blood. Nigeria had seen armed robbers before, but never someone this bold. The media began calling him Nigeria's public enemy number one. Rumors spread everywhere. Some claimed he used shams. Others believed bullets could not kill him. Fear turned him into a myth, and the more the public feared him, the more powerful he became. Entire roads became deserted at night because drivers feared running into Anini's gang. Businesses closed early. Travelers avoided highways. Parents warned their children about him like a monster from folklore. But behind the scenes, the government was preparing for war. The Nigerian government could no longer ignore the crisis. A massive manhunt began. Police units across the country were ordered to capture Anini, dead or alive. Roadblocks appeared everywhere. Homes were searched. Suspected gang members disappeared into police custody. Yet somehow, Anini kept escaping. Every failed operation made him look invisible, and then came the robbery that changed everything. Anini's gang began targeting financial institutions and wealthy individuals. Their operations were military-style assaults. Witnesses described explosions of gunfire, Terrified customers lying on the floor and bodies left behind after the gang escaped. The robberies shocked the entire nation. At this point, Anini was no longer just a criminal. He had become a symbol of total lawlessness. The government faced humiliation. How could one man challenge an entire country? The answer was terrifying because corruption inside the system was helping him survive. Report later suggested that some police officers secretly leaked information to the gang. Raids failed before they even started. For some reason, Anini seemed to be one step ahead of the Nigerian police until finally someone betrayed him. In late 1986, authorities received critical intelligence about Anini's location. For the first time, police had a real chance. A special operation was launched in Benin City, where officers closed in. Chaos erupted. Gunfire exploded through the streets. Anini attempted to escape, but during the confrontation, he was shot. The man once believed to be untouchable had finally fallen. The police captured him alive. Nigeria erupted in celebration. After months of fear, the nightmare was finally over. But the story wasn't finished yet because now the nation wanted answers. The trial of Lawrence Anini became one of the biggest criminal cases in Nigerian history. Crowds gathered daily. Newspapers published every detail. People wanted to see the face of the man who had terrified an entire nation. Inside the court, Anini reportedly remained calm, cold, and emotionless. The government charged him with multiple counts of armed robbery and murder. Witnesses after witnesses described horrifying attacks. Families mourned loved ones. Police officers recounted ambushes, and slowly, the myth of the law began collapsing into reality. He wasn't supernatural. He wasn't invisible. He was simply a man who chose violence. The verdict was inevitable. Guilty. Sentence: death by execution. In 1987, Lawrence Anini faced his final moments. The once feared king of the underworld was now a prisoner awaiting execution. Reports says his confidence had disappeared. The streets that once trembled at his name had moved on, and when the execution was finally carried out, one of Nigeria's darkest criminal chapters came to an end. But the legends never truly die. Even decades later, Nigerians still speak about Anini. Some remember him as pure evil. Others see him as a product of poverty, corruption, and a broken system. But one fact remains undeniable. For a brief moment in history, one man brought an entire nation to fear the night. The story of Lawrence Anini is more than a crime story. It is a warning about what happens when poverty, corruption, fear, and violence collide. Nigeria survived the era of Anini, but his legend still lives in whispered conversations, old newspaper archives, and memories of those who lived through the terror, because some names are never forgotten, and Lawrence Anini is one of them. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe for more true crime and history stories from Africa and around the world, and comment below. Do you think Anini was born evil or created by the system?